Hi there. This is the part 3 of creating our bounce game. So in this lecture, we'll be creating our paddle. So under the class ball, let's create a new class. So class paddle. I'll hit enter there. Awesome. Class paddle. And it's going to be initialized almost the same way as our ball, but with a few changes. So def initialize or init self canvas color. Awesome. We're going to say self.canvas is equal to canvas. Self.id is equal to. And now there'll be a small change over here. So we're going to be canvas.create rectangle. Obviously our paddle cannot be an oval because that won't make sense. But you never know. You could create an oval. Canvas.create rectangle, and our size, let's make it 0, 0 and then 100, 10. So a nice thin paddle. And then what we're going to say is we have to fill the color too. Don't forget that. So comma fill is equal to the color that was provided. All right, great. Now what do we have to do? We have to create self.canvas move. And where do we want to move it? Let's move it to this place. Self.id. So give the ID where and where. 200, 300. And then let's create one more function like we did with the ball. Def draw takes the parameter self. And then we're just going to put pass there for now. Awesome. Command S, F5. But before we do that, let's do one more thing and add this over here. Let's add the paddle.draw function. Great. Command S, F5. And what do we have? We don't see it. And why is that? Because we have not initialized it yet. So we have a ball, but we don't have a paddle. So let's create paddle is equal to paddle class, passing in canvas, and let's have this, a blue paddle. Now this can be completely up to you. You can change the colors however you like. I'm just going with the standard. All right, and awesome. So we now have our ball and we have our paddle. So it's giving me an x1 not defined. I guess I haven't deleted the array yet. Sorry about that. So Command S, F5, and now we should have a ball that bounces and a paddle that does not move. And if the ball goes or hits the paddle, it'll just go through. So we need to make a few changes to our program. It's not ready just yet. Alright, but now we have a ball and a paddle, so that's great. Let's close out of this. Stop. Yes. Okay. First thing first, we have to make the paddle move. Because if the paddle doesn't move, there's no point in playing the game. So let's add two functions to our paddle class. And they're quite simple functions. Def turn left. So moving the paddle left. It's going to take two, self and EVT, or event for short. And we're going to just say here self.x should be -2. And def turn right. So if you want to make the paddle move right, self, event, self.x should be equal to 2. But we haven't even initialized the x here. So let's initialize the x. Self.x is equal to 0. So right now it's stationary. We're not doing anything with it. Great. We also now have to update the draw. So before we do that, we will bind the key press left and the key press right. Alright, so we now have our self.x and we've created this. Let's now bind the keys. So before doing that, let's get our width. We need the width so that our paddle doesn't go off the board. So self.canvas.width is equal to, or underscore width, is equal to, and what was the function? Self.canvas.winfo underscore width. Great. Now let's bind the keys. So remember, left key and right key, nothing too hard. Self.canvas.bind all. Just remember, we learned this in a few lectures ago. Self.canvas.bind all. Key press left. And comma, what event will we be doing? It's self.turn left. So remember, it's composed of two things. One is which key are we binding, and remember the alligator mouth, sorry. So what key are we binding? We're binding the left key. And what are we binding it to? We're binding it to the function self.turnLeft. Now the same way, I'm just going to do Command C and Command V. It's just going to save me some time. Key press right. And what is that? Self.turnRight. Voila. Command S, F5. Let's see what we have. Unexpected indent. So it's giving me an error. Let's see where. Over here. So it looks like when we were copying and pasting, that might have accidentally come. F5. And look at that. So our paddle is not moving, but we have the bouncing ball. That's interesting. Let's close this and take a look. So self.x, and the reason why, if you don't know already, is because in our def draw, we haven't moved it yet. So there's no point in giving the functions if we're not moving our paddle. So let's quickly add that in. Self.canvas.move. It's just like the ball, so don't worry. Self.id. So what are we moving? It's the ID. And where are we moving it to? Self.x, and we're not making go up or down, so it's going to be 0. So self.canvas.move, self.id, self.x, 0. Great. Now, just like in the ball, we'll be taking the coordinates. So position is equal to self.canvas.coords. And what are we taking it off? Self.id. I'm going through this a bit fast, but if you have any complications, just look at what we did with the ball. It's the exact same thing. Now, right now, if you don't add this code, let's just try running it to see where we are. F5. And now we have a paddle that moves, but the problem is, 1 is, whoops, the ball went right through, and 2 is, the paddle went right out of our screen. So we have to fix those two instances. The first one is easy to fix. We have to first make sure that the paddle stays in the screen. So to do that, we're going to say if position 0 is less than or equal to 0. So remember in our array x1, y1, x2, y2. So if our leftmost edge of the paddle is at the leftmost part of the screen, then we're going to say self.x should be equal to 2. And if position 2 is less than or equal to or greater than or equal to our height, so self or width in this case, self.canvas width, all we want to say is self.x is equal to -2. Or actually, no, we don't want this. We don't want the 2 or the -2. We want to keep it 0. It should be on user input that the paddle goes back and forth. Obviously, if it hits the edge, the paddle should stop moving. So Command S, F5. What do we get? So the paddle moves, nothing happens. But if it hits the edge, it stops. And if it hits the other edge, it stops. Okay, great, awesome. So let's close this up, great. So now we have a paddle, and the paddle is able to move both left and right, and it'll stop if it reaches the left end or the right end. Awesome. So right now, if you notice, you have to click the canvas before the game recognizes the left and right key actions. Clicking the canvas gives the canvas focus. So if we don't click the canvas, it won't know that it's selected. Like right now, my bounce or my IDLE is not selected. So if I try typing, nothing comes. As soon as I type, then it realizes what we're doing. Great. So now we have to find out when the ball hits the paddle. But we'll be doing that in the next lecture. So in this lecture, we learned about creating our class paddle and making it stop when it hits the left and right and binding our keys together. In the next lecture, we'll be dealing with finding out when the ball hits the paddle. See you in the next lecture.